A very warm welcome to this video. I am Prabal Nandwani and you're watching the monthly predictions for May 2023. First of all, let us have a look at the various planetary changes which are happening this month. On the 2nd of May, we have Venus transiting onto Gemini. Then on the 10th of May, we have Mars going on to Cancer and getting debilitated. On the 16th, we have the Sun passing over to Taurus, as well as on the 16th, Mercury is getting back into the direct motion from a retrograde motion. And finally, on the 30th of May, we have Venus transiting to Cancer as well. Now, apart from these planetary movements, there are some planetary yogas or combinations which are happening in the month of May. What are these? First of all, we have the full moon on the 5th of May. And not only will this be a full moon, but we'll also have an lunar eclipse on the 5th of May. And then we'll start the dark half or the waning moon, and we'll have the new moon on the 19th of May. Also, there will be a Gaj Kesari Yoga which is made with the combination of Moon and Jupiter, which is happening on the 5th, the 6th, the 11th, 12th, 13th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 24th, 25th and the 26th of this month. We have the Mahalakshmi Yoga, which is a combination of Moon and Mars on the 25th and the 26th of May. We also have the Buddha Aditya Yoga, that is a combination of Sun and Mercury till the 15th of May. Gods are showering their beneficence all this month, and we have some important festivals coming up. On the 4th of May, we have Narsi Jayanti. On the 5th of May, we have Kurma Jayanti. On the 19th, we have Shanichar Jayanti. And on the 28th, we have Dhumvati Jayanti. Now, what does all this mean for people who are born in various signs of the zodiac is something which I'm going to discuss in detail right ahead. But before I do it, there are two important things which I need to discuss with you. First is when you were born at that particular point of time, the planetary combinations which were there do affect your future. So whatever I say will be subject to those combinations in your birth chart. Secondly, our program or our predictions are based upon the planetary positions at your birth. For example, what was the Lagna? Where did the Lagna or the Ascendant and the Moon fall when you were born? If they fell, for example, in the sign Cancer, then when I speak about the sign Cancer, that portion of the video would be relevant for you. So let's go ahead and dive in on the predictions for various zodiac signs. First of all, let us move on to the Aries sign. Let us see where the planets are transiting in the Aries horoscope all this month of May 2023. In your first house, we have 4 planets, that is Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury. In the second house, we have Venus. In the third house, we have Mars. In the 7th house, we have Ketu. And finally, in the 11th house, we have the presence of the mighty Saturn. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something that we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. First of all, we'll talk about the luck factor which is seen from the 9th house. The owner of the 9th house happens to be Jupiter, but Jupiter is placed right now with Rahu, and this is not a very nice combination. Therefore, the luck is not running too high. It is just on a sim, or it is just average. If you need to make some important decisions, it is better we wait for a little while and let Jupiter cross on the degrees of Rahu, and then it will be more comfortably placed and the luck will be favoring you more. Talking about your health now, health is seen from the first house. In the first house, you have this deadly combination of Jupiter and then Rahu and then Sun and then Mercury, and the owner of the first house, which happens to be Mars, on the 10th of May will go on to Cancer and get debilitated. It means you have to be careful regarding your health. If there is anything wrong, you immediately have to consult the doctor, and in case there is some gastric issues, rheumatic issues or some kind of tensions going on, then doing or chanting the Rahu's Bij mantra will be very helpful. The Bij mantras of Rahu are Om Brahm Brim Brahm Sahrave Nama. Moving on to your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Sun, which is right now, it has crossed the degrees of Saturn. So there might be some misunderstandings which are now getting over because your love partner gave you a call back because the Mercury is retrograde. But from the 16th, it will go on to Taurus, and after it goes on to Taurus, then it will be better times ahead. Moving on and talking about your married life now. In the house of marriage, that is the 7th house, we have the presence of Ketu, and Ketu normally causes misunderstandings, or it also might cause some ill health to the spouse. However, if we talk only about this particular month, because the presence of Ketu has been for the past few months and will be here till the 30th of October 2023. However, if we talk only about this month, then the owner of the 7th house, which happens to be Venus, will be transiting to Gemini on the 22nd and will remain here till the 30th, that is most of the month. And especially after the 11th, the situation is going to improve, and if there have been any previous arguments, they will die down, and again there will be harmony prevailing in the house. Moving on and talking about your education now, which is seen from the 5th house, which the owner of the 5th house happens to be Sun, but it will going to transfer to Taurus on the 16th. So after the 16th, the chances of education is better, the concentration power is better. In case you have some important examination coming up and you have a choice, then it is far better to take that examination after the 16th of May. Moving ahead and talking about your career now. Career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house is there, right there in the 11th house, which is a very good thing. And it has also crossed the degregal aspects of Ketu and Mars. And therefore, it is in a very, very powerful position. So, as far as career is concerned, now is the time for those of you who have not settled down yet, you will settle down. For those of you who are already in a job, already you were well settled, but you were facing some turmoil, the turmoil is going to end. And if you were looking in for a new job, then this is the right time to get it. Moving ahead and talking about the business now. Business is seen from the 7th house. The presence of Ketu is of course not very nice over there, but it has been so for the previous few months. It creates a lot of inflexibility as far as business policies are concerned, and therefore some of the customers turn away. However, this month does promise to be better because the owner of the 7th house is supposed to be Venus, who would move on to Gemini, and after the 11th of May, when it crosses the essential degrees of Ketu, it will start to give you better results. You can get the old disagreements with customers resolved, and you might also be able to attract new customers. Let us move on and talk about the Taurus sign now. First of all, we'll have a look at the planetary placement in the horoscope of Taurus natives all this month of May 2023. We have in the Ascendant the presence of Venus. In the 2nd house, we have the presence of Mars. In the 6th house, we have the presence of Ketu. In the 10th house, we have the presence of Saturn. And in the 12th house, we have the presence of 4 planets, the Jupiter, the Rahu, the Sun, and Mercury. And when there are 4 planets transiting in your 12th house, definitely the expenditures are on the rise, and maybe sometimes the sleep is also disturbed. So what does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something we are going to discuss in detail right away. Stay tuned. First, we'll talk about the luck factor, which is seen from the 9th house, and the owner of your 9th house happens to be in the 10th house and is powerfully placed there, and therefore luck is favoring you 100%, especially after the 10th of May when Mars will move on to Cancer. If there are some important decisions which you were waiting to take, then this is the time that you take those bold decisions and move ahead in life, because luck is favoring you. Moving ahead and talking about the health factor, the health is seen from the Ascendant. The owner of the Ascendant will move on to the 2nd house for majority of this month, from the 2nd till the 30th of May. And therefore, as far as health is concerned, it will be good, but after the 11th of May, because at 11th of May, Venus will be able to come to cross the degrees of the aspect degrees of Ketu. Till then, for those particular 10 days, there is some kind of a problem, maybe that there might be in the eyes or in the lower back, but that will be easily over. Moving on and talking about your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Mercury. Now Mercury is placed with Rahu in the 12th house. This is not a very conducive placement, so you need to be a little cautious about the misunderstandings which might happen, because Rahu creates misunderstandings. It is a smoke, and in an illusion you start to do suspicion, and which is not good for any relationship to prosper. Let us talk about your marriage now. Marriage is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Mars, and Mars is going to get debilitated in the sign of Cancer from the 10th of May. And when it does, then you need to be careful and control your temperament and not let the emotions run high. It is the time to make the tempers even so that harmony can prevail at house. Moving ahead and talking about your education now. Education is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is Mercury, which is there in the 12th house with Rahu. So if you are preparing for anything to go outside the country, those kind of examinations like the IELTS, like the TOEFL, GRE, GMAT or things like those, then it is a very good time to do so. Otherwise, it doesn't promise to be a very, very nice time for studies. You need to do more effort, and the numbers, the percentage of marks which actually come in the result are a little less than expected. That's it. Moving ahead and talking about career now. Career is seen from the 10th house, and the owner of the 10th house is sitting in the 10th house and has crossed the degrees, the aspectal degrees of Ketu and Mars, which is a very good sign. So it is all powerful. You can just go ahead and you'll have blessed times. The boss, if there was a boss who was disturbing you, he will be changed, he will go somewhere, and therefore you will have the blessings of Almighty and your career will prosper. If you were looking out for a new job, then this is the time to do it, because you'll be able to grab it. Moving ahead and talking about your business now. Business is seen from the 7th house. Owner of the 7th house is Mars, and Mars is currently there in Gemini, but from the 10th of May it will move on to Cancer, but it will get debilitated there. Because it will get debilitated there, therefore this will not be a very, very conducive time for business. You need to take a step back and just keep the momentum going rather than moving on and having any kind of joint ventures in this particular month. Let's move ahead and talk about the Gemini sign now. First of all, we'll see where the planets are transiting all this month in your horoscope. Well, in your 1st house, we have the mighty Mars. In your 5th house, we have Ketu. In your 9th house, we have Saturn. In your 11th house, we have the presence of 4 planets, the Jupiter, the Rahu, the Sun, and the Mercury. In your 12th house, we have the presence of Venus. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something which we are going to discuss right ahead. First of all, we'll talk about the luck factor, which is seen from the 9th house, and Saturn, the owner of the luck, is sitting in the 9th house, which is a very good sign, and therefore luck is favoring you. You might take some of the important decisions in your life in this particular month. Talking about your health now, health is seen from the 1st house. In the 1st house, we'll have mostly the presence of Venus from the 2nd to the 30th of May. Mars will move ahead on the 10th and move on to the Cancer sign. So what will this mean for your health? It means the health will be better, but since the owner of the health is happens to be Mercury and it will be with Rahu, so there might be some troubles related to gas, headache, blood pressure or things like those, for which doing of Rahu's mantras are important. They are going to cause a lot of relief in this. And the Bij mantras of Rahu are Om Brahm Brim Brahm Sar Rahve Nama. Moving on and talking about your love life. In your love house, we have the presence of Ketu, which is not a very good thing, but it has been so for the past few months and it will be so for the next few months till the month of October. So it has been a little low time as far as new affairs are concerned or enjoying your love life is concerned. However, this particular month there is a good news. The good news is that Venus is going to go to Gemini, and on the 11th it is going to cross the degrees of Ketu, and therefore it will be a better time this particular month. So in this period of drought for the past few months and the next few months, here you can find some rain. Moving on and talking about the marital aspects which are seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Jupiter. Jupiter is placed in the 11th house, which is a good sign, but it is placed with Rahu. So for those of you whose Rahu is very good, which is good in the case of very few people in your birth chart, for them it is really a very tremendously blessed time. However, for others it is a time where you need to be a little careful, because there will be disharmony out of nothing. Trifles are going to make a misunderstanding between you and your spouse. So hold on and keep some patience. don't have just arguments for the sake of nothing. Always see what was the reason because of which we are having a problem. If the reason is really very important one, then you can go ahead and do whatever you wish to. But the point is, normally in this particular situation, a fight occurs only on a trifle issue, which could have easily been avoided. Moving ahead and talking about your education now. The educational prospects are seen from the 5th house. In the 5th house, we have the presence of Ketu. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Venus, and the Venus will be comfortably placed in the Gemini sign and will have an aspect on the 5th house, and therefore educational prospects are better as far as the month of May 2023 is concerned. Now let's talk about your career. Career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house is supposed to be Jupiter, and it is sitting in the 11th house along with Rahu and also Sun and Mercury. So therefore, as far as career is concerned, unless your career is related with Rahu, that means unless your career is concerned with some hidden aspects, like a career in mines, in LIC, in occult sciences, in intelligence agencies, these kind of things, then it is very nice. These are blessed times for you. But for others, these are not very blessed times. There might be some problems at the workplace which you can avoid, and if you're not able to avoid, then you can chant Bij mantras of Rahu, which is Om Brahm Bhrim Brahm Sarrahve Nama. Alright, now let's talk about business. Business is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house is again Jupiter, which is sitting in the 11th house, which is a good sign, but with Rahu. Again, if you are engaged in some kind of business activities which are related with Rahu, for example mining, or for example making of toilets, or for example into gas and petroleum products, or for example life insurance or occult related arts, then this is a very blessed time for you. Your business will grow. Otherwise, if you are related in other fields, then you need to do Rahu's Bij mantras, Om Brahm Bhrim Brahm Sarrahve Nama, or wait a little and then again your business will prosper. Let's move ahead and talk about the Cancer sign now. First of all, let's have a look at various planetary placements in your horoscope all this month. Well, we have the Ketu in your 4th house, Saturn in your 8th house, Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury in your 10th house, Venus in your 11th house, and Mars in your 12th house. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something which we are going to discuss right ahead, right now in detail. First of all, let's talk about your luck factor. Luck is seen from the 9th house. The owner of the 9th house happens to be Jupiter, but Jupiter is placed in the 10th house with Rahu. Luck is on the low. If there were some important decisions which you need to make, just postpone them to a later date. It is not a very good time to make important decisions now. Let's talk about the health factor. Health factor is seen from the Ascendant. And Mars will occupy the Ascendant from the 10th. So you need to be on guard for any aggressive tendencies, for angers, for fever, blood pressure, tension, etc. And if you are harmed by any of these things, then chanting of Rahu's of Mars Bij mantras are important, and the Bij mantras of Mars are Om Krang Kring Krong Sa Bhamay Nama. Let's talk about your love life now, which is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Mars. And Mars will come on to the Ascendant from the 10th, and it will have a 120-degree aspect to the 5th house, and therefore you're going to have blessed times as far as love life is concerned. Moving ahead and talking about your marital life now, which is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Saturn. It has gone to the 10th house for 2.5 years this January. What does it mean? It means that there are bound to be some kind of issues between you and your spouse, or the health of the spouse might be at stake. However, the good news is that now Saturn has crossed the degrees, the aspectal degrees of Ketu and Mars, which were causing more problems or which were a reason for the descent. And now, since those reasons have moved away, Saturn is moving on. Therefore, the things are going to get better from this time. It is going to take a little while more, but the things are going to get better. And if you want to do something about it, then you can chant the Bij mantras of Saturn, which is Om Prang Pring Prong Sa Shanishcharaya Nama. Om Prang Pring Prong Sa Shanishcharaya Nama. Moving ahead and talking about your education now, which is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is Mars. The Mars is going to come in the Ascendant and aspect the 5th house, which will be a good thing. And therefore, it is better that in case you can take the examinations or take the admissions after the 10th of May, because on the 10th, the Mars is going to enter the sign of Cancer. Also in this month, many of you will find a new interest in studies. So it will be an enkindling of interest in studies. Moving ahead now and talking about your career, which is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house is Mars. It is going to go into the Ascendant, but it is going to get debilitated. What it means basically is that this will not be a very, very conducive time, because Rahu is also sitting in the 10th house, and therefore you need to keep yourself, lie a little low, play a little dumber than you really are. Just bide your time a few more months, because the boss might not be as intelligent as you wanted him to be, or as full of camaraderie as you wanted him to be, and therefore it is time to just lie low and let it pass. And in case you have more trouble, then do the Bij mantras of Rahu, which is Om Bhram Bhrim Bhram Sarrahve Nama. Moving on and talking about your business life now, which is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Saturn, but it has gone to the 8th house. It is not a very good sign. However, the major setbacks are over, because it has crossed the degrees of Mars and Ketu. So the setbacks are over. So there are no new setbacks coming, but still Saturn is there in the 8th house for a few months to go. And therefore what you have to do is, in case you want to get an upliftment, then you have to do the Bij mantras of Saturn, which is Om Prang Pring Prong Sachaneshwaraya Nama. Also donate something, or a better remedy would be to find some filthy place, and in the evening sleep over some iron related old keys or old items, and on a Saturday evening go to a filthy place and throw that particular item there. This is going to help you in your business. Moving ahead and talking about the Leo sign now. First of all, let's have a look at the various planetary placements in your horoscope all this month. Well, we have Ketu transiting your 3rd house, Saturn transiting your 7th house, we have the Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury transiting your 9th house, Venus transiting your 10th house, and Mars transiting your 11th house. What does all this planetary placement mean for various aspects of your life is something that we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. Talking about your luck factor now, the luck is seen from the 9th house, and in the 9th house there are so many planets transiting. A, it will give you a chance to travel more. B, now as far as luck is concerned, since the presence of Rahu is there, so this is not a very conducive time. Also Mars is going to get debilitated, and therefore luck is on the low. If there are some important decisions to be made, it is wiser to just postpone them to a time when the luck starts favoring you, which is going to happen after 1 or 2 months. Let's now talk about your health. Health is seen from the 1st house. In the 1st house, we don't have any planet right now. However, the owner of the 1st house is Sun, and Sun is going to go to the Taurus sign very soon, and therefore you are going to have good times as far as health is concerned. Now let's talk about your love life, which is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Jupiter, but Jupiter is in close conjunction with Rahu. So unless you have an affair, with some kind of a foreigner or an out of caste person, a different religion person, then the things are very positive. But otherwise, there might be confusions, there might be some inharmonious incidents because of some suspicions which might be there between you and your love partner. It is time to keep the suspicions on hold and just go on with your momentum which you were going earlier. In case you are looking in for making new relationships, so new relationships which are made during this times are generally materialistic in nature and don't last long. However, if you are looking in for proposing somebody who's out of your caste or who's a foreigner, then this is the right time to do so. Let's move ahead and talk about your marital prospects now. Marital prospects are seen from the 7th house. In your 7th house, we have the presence of Saturn. It is sitting very comfortably in its own house, and therefore marital relationships are going to get smoother and harmonious. Enjoy it. Let's talk about the education factor now. Education is seen from the 5th house. Owner of the 5th house is Jupiter, and it sees its own house, but it is there with Rahu, and therefore there might be distractions you need to keep your focus on. However, in case you were planning to give or take some examinations related to going to any foreign country, then it is a good time. Also, if you were planning to give in exams related to Rahu, for example, something related to the insurance industry, something related to gas and petroleum, then something related to intelligence agencies, then this is a absolutely conducive time. Moving ahead and talking about your career now. The career prospects are seen from the 10th house. In the 10th house, we have the presence of Venus till the 2nd of May, and then we'll have the presence of Sun from the 16th of May. Now this is going to be a conducive time as far as career is concerned. Now let us move on and talk about your business life. Now business is seen from the 7th house. In the 7th house we have the presence of the 7th Lord, which also happens to be the 6th Lord. So therefore the business will grow. It is a very good time as far as business growth is concerned. Let's move on and talk about the Virgo sign. First of all, let's see at the various planetary placements all throughout the month of May 2023 in your horoscope. We have Ketu sitting in the 2nd house, Saturn sitting in the 6th house, 4 planets in the 8th house, the Jupiter, the Rahu, the Sun and the Mercury. We have Venus sitting in the 9th house and Mars sitting in the 10th house. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something which we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. Well, in your 9th house, that is the luck house, we have Venus. And Venus is going to go and occupy the 10th house now from the 11th of May, which is a good thing. And therefore, luck is favoring you. It is a good sign. If there were some important decisions which needed to be taken, then this is the time that you can go ahead and boldly take those decisions. Now let's talk about the health factor, which is seen from the 1st house. The owner of the 1st house happens to be Mercury, but Mercury is placed in the 8th house, and that too with Rahu. Now this is not a very good sign. You need to be a little careful, a little guarded against diseases. Keep your immunity level high. There might be some problems related to skin, some skin allergies or some nerve related issues or some problems at the genital organ, and in case it is so, then chanting of Rahu's Bij mantra will be helpful. The Bij mantra of Rahu is Om Bhram Bhrim Bhram Sar Rahve Nama. Om Bhram Bhrim Bhram Sar Rahve Nama. Let's talk about your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is sitting in the 6th house, but it is comfortable. 6th house is not a very good or a conducive position for a love affair to prosper, and therefore there are bound to be certain arguments or misconceptions between you and your love partner. So be a little guarded regarding that, and in case you want to rectify them, then just chant the Bij mantras of Saturn, Om Prang Pring Prong Sasinishchiraya Nama. Moving ahead and talking about your marital life now. The marital life is seen from the 7th house. Now the owner of the 7th house happens to be Jupiter, and Jupiter has transited to the 8th house. Now this is not a very conducive thing, and especially Jupiter is with Rahu, and therefore unnecessary misunderstandings or bad health of the spouse is on the cards. And in order to alleviate the situation, chant the Bij mantra of Rahu, which is Om Bhram Bhrim Bhram Sar Rahve Nama. Let's talk about your educational prospects now. Education is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is Saturn, and it is there lying in the 6th house, which is a very good sign as far as any kind of competitive examinations are concerned. It has already crossed the degrees of Mars and Ketu, and therefore success will be there in education for you. Let's talk about your career prospects now. Career is seen from the 10th house. In the 10th house, we have the presence of Mars, but Mars will go from on the 10th to the 11th house, and this 10th house will be occupied by Venus from the 2nd till the 30th of May. And this will be a good sign because Venus happens to be your 9th and the 2nd Lord, and therefore career is going to be on the high. Let's talk about the business prospects now. Business prospects are seen from the 7th house. The 7th Lord happens to be Jupiter, and it is there transiting in the 8th house along with Rahu. It is not a good thing. Therefore, the proposals which you get, superficially they will be good, but when you dive deep down, then you will understand there were some kind of deceptions which you didn't look before. And it is not a wise time to move on to jump in and do new business ventures. Let's move on and talk about the Libra sign now. First of all, we'll have a look at various planets which are transiting in your horoscope in the month of May 2023. Well, in your first house, we have the presence of Ketu. In your fifth house, we have the presence of Saturn. In the seventh house, we have the presence of 4 planets: Jupiter, Rahu, Sun, and Mercury. And in your 8th house, we have Venus. In your 9th house, we have Mars. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something which we are going to discuss right ahead. Talking about your luck factor. Luck is seen from the 9th house, and the 9th house will be occupied by the 8th Lord Venus very soon, from the 2nd till the 30th of May, which means luck is lying a little low. If there were some important decisions to be taken, it is not wise to take them right now in this month. Moving now and talking about your health. The house of the health or the ascendant is occupied by Ketu, which normally gives blockages, which gives tensions. You have to focus a lot on your problems, and therefore this is not a very conducive time. However, the owner of the ascendant is Venus, and Venus will occupy the 9th house, and therefore things will get better this particular month. However, still, if you feel that there needs some kind of astrological intervention, then chanting the Bij mantras of Ketu will be immensely helpful. The Bij mantra of Ketu is Om Sram Srim Sram Sah Ketve Namah. Moving ahead and talking about your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house. The 5th house happens to be Aquarius, and Saturn is sitting there, and it has already crossed the misunderstandings which were being caused by Mars and Ketu, and therefore love life will be prospering all this month. If there were some new proposals which you wanted to give, then after the 10th of May it will be a very conducive time, because Venus will also form a relationship with a 120-degree relationship with Saturn, and Mars will move away. So all that was causing problems will go away, and it will be a blessed time as far as love life is concerned. Talking about the marital aspects now. The marital aspects are seen from the 7th house. In the 7th house, we have the planets, 4 planets sitting there. There might be some guests in your house this month, and there might be some misunderstandings because of somebody said something and you just believed in it. So it is far better that in a relationship you don't let the opinions of outsider come in between, and just have the harmony between the husband and the wife prevail. In case there have been some arguments between you and your spouse, then chanting of Rahu's Bij mantras will prove to be useful, and the Bij mantra of Rahu is Om Brahm Bhrim Brong Sah Rahve Namah. Also, lighting of a mustard oil diya on the altar of the house, the main door of the house, will be a good thing to do. Now let's talk about the educational prospects. The education is seen from the 5th house, and the owner of the 5th house is sitting in the 5th house and will also be aspected by Venus very soon. All this gives you a promising time as far as education is concerned. In fact, the coming whole year is very good. So in case you were planning to take on some courses and do some degree courses, it is really a very conducive time. Talking about your career aspects now. The career is seen from the 10th house, and the 10th house will be occupied from the 10th of May by Mars, but Mars will get debilitated here. This is not a very good sign, because there might be a change in a boss, or the colleague might prove to be unhelpful to you. You need to be on guard from colleagues and bosses. Be very tight-lipped when it comes to dealing with your boss or your colleague all this month. Let's talk about your business life now. Business is seen from the 7th house, and in the 7th house there is so much of confusion. There are so many new opportunities which are happening, but there is the presence of Rahu, which means for majority of you, those new proposals are not very good. They are superficially good, but when you take a deeper look, there might be some deceptions which you did not notice in the first instance. So be guarded and don't just fall for alluring new ventures. Let's move ahead and talk about the Scorpio sign now. First of all, let's have a look at the planets which are transiting in your horoscope all this month of May 2023. Well, in your 4th house, we have the presence of Saturn. In your 6th house, we have the presence of Jupiter, Rahu, Mercury, and Sun. In your 7th house, we have the presence of Venus. And in your 8th house, we have the presence of Mars. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something we are going to discuss right ahead. First of all, let's talk about your luck factor. Luck is seen from the 9th house. In the 9th house, we'll have the presence of Mars, which will get debilitated in the 9th house. So this is not a very, very conducive time as far as luck is concerned. Luck is just like average. However, if you're thinking of participating in any kind of competition, or you were thinking of doing some projects where you're doing some service, then this is luck is favoring you in these two aspects. Otherwise, luck is a little on the low side. Moving ahead and talking about your health now. Health is seen from the Ascendant, and the Lord of the Ascendant is going to get debilitated, so you need to take care of what you eat. Keep your immunity level high, and in case there is a problem, chant the Bij mantras of Mars. The Bij mantra of Mars is Om Krang Kring Krom Sa Bhamai Nama. Om Krang Kring Krom Sa Bhamai Nama. Moving ahead and talking about your love life now. The love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Jupiter, is going to the 6th house. 6th house is not a good house for love. It is a house of working, and 5th house is a house of enjoyment. 6th house, labor. 5th house, fun. Also, Jupiter is combined with the mischievous Rahu. So what it basically means is, just because of suspicion, there might be some problem in the relationships. If you can keep the suspicion down, if you can find time away from work for the enjoyment, then the love prospects will be far better this month. Now let's talk about your marital life. Marital life is seen from the 7th house. In the 7th house, we'll have the presence of Sun from the 16th. So this will be good. However, Venus, which is the owner of the 7th house, is going to move from the 2nd until the 30th of May to the 8th house. Now, this does not fare well as far as the harmony in relationships is concerned, or the health of the spouse is concerned. You need to be a little on guard. Keep your temperament a little low, because Sun coming here will bring the heat up. You need to cool it down, and in case there is some health issue, then the spouse can chant the Bij mantras of Venus. The Bij mantra of Venus is Om Dram Dream Drom Sa Shukrai Nama. Om Dram Dream Drom Sa Shukrai Nama. Moving ahead and talking about your educational prospects. Now, education is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is sitting in the 6th house with Rahu. This gives a lot of distractions. Also, Jupiter is there with other two planets, that is Mercury and Sun, and therefore there's a lot of confusion as far as education is concerned. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Should I be continuing what I'm doing, etc.? So you need to sit down, focus on what you're doing in order to get the right kind of results. In case you have a lack of vision, to gain more vision, you can chant the Bij mantras of Rahu, which is Om Brahm Brim Brahm Sarrave Nama. Talking about your career aspects now. The career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house happens to be Sun, which is right now sitting in the 6th house, but it will move to the 7th house very soon. All this promises a very good time as far as your career is concerned. If you want a good job, this is the right time. If you want a better project being assigned to you, then also this is the right time. So there are new opportunities, new customers, new projects, new jobs coming up for you in the month of May 2023. Let's move on and talk about your business life now. Business is seen from the 7th house, and the owner of the business is Venus, which will go on to the 8th house, which is again not a very good thing. There might be some tension related to the payments which you were receiving, etc. And therefore, no new ventures, new significant ventures should be undertaken in the month of 2023 May. Okay, let's move on and talk about the Sagittarius sign now. Let us see where the planets are transiting in your horoscope all this month of May 2023. Well, we have Saturn in your 3rd house. We have 4 planets, Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury in your 5th house. In your 6th house we have Venus, and in your 7th house we have the presence of Mars. Finally, we have the presence of Ketu in your 11th house. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something which we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. Talking about your luck factor. The owner of the luck house, that is the 9th house, is Sun. And Sun is going to go to the 6th house from the 16th of May and occupy the Taurus sign. Now, since Sun has crossed Rahu, so better times are ahead, although luck is average, but now it is not low. So the luck is on the rise. Still, if you were to take some very, very important decisions of your life, I would recommend that you do it not this month, just wait a little. And in the next month, the times will be comfortable from the 16th of next month, because then the Sun will be transiting the sign of Gemini. Let's move ahead and talk about your health now. The health is seen from the 1st house. The owner of the 1st house in your case happens to be Jupiter, and Jupiter is there in the 5th house, but it is there with the mischievous Rahu. Therefore, this is not a very good time. You need to be wary of your daily cycle. Sleep on time, take limited amount of food, buy it from the right kind of a shop, and increase your immunity power. Still, if you catch any disease, then chanting of Rahu's Bij Mantra is going to be helpful. The Bij Mantra of Rahu is Om Brahm Brim Brahm Sarrave Nama. Let's talk about your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Mars, and Mars is going to be debilitated in the 8th house from the 10th of May. Now, the 5th house is also being occupied by Rahu. This is not a very conducive and promising time as far as love is concerned. Therefore, you need to be on guard. There might be some distractions, there might be some cheatings as far as your love life is concerned. Okay, let's move on and let's talk about your marital aspects now. Marital aspects are seen from the 7th house. In the 7th house, we have the presence of Mars, but it is going to move away from the 10th. And Gemini, or the 7th house, is going to be occupied by the 6th Lord Venus. It is going to bring in some kind of misunderstandings, because it is also going to make a relationship with Ketu, and therefore chanting of Ketu's Bij Mantra is going to be immensely helpful. The Bij Mantra of Ketu is Om Sram Srim Sram Sah Ketve Nama. Om Sram Srim Sram Sah Ketve Nama. Let's move ahead and talk about your educational prospects now. Educational prospects are seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Mars, but Mars is going to go to the 8th house. Not good. 5th house is being occupied by Rahu. Again, not good. What it means is there are a lot of distractions happening. You need to put in a little effort and put your focus cap back on if you want to succeed in your educational prospects. Moving ahead and talking about your career now. The career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house happens to be Mercury, and Mercury is sitting with Rahu right now in the 5th house. So whatever you're doing is good for the other person, the other party. As far as you are concerned, it is not a very good time. You need to be on guard. Somebody might be backbiting, and therefore it is better to be tight-lipped and be cautious about what is happening about you in the office. Moving ahead and talking about your business prospects now. Business is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Mercury. Again, Mercury is with Rahu all this month, and therefore this is not a very conducive time. Whatever you undertake will be good for your partner, but not very good for you. In case it is okay with you, just go ahead. Otherwise, just stall. Wait a little while for 30-40 days, and again the sun will shine, and there will be brighter aspects or brighter chances in your business. Let's move ahead and talk about the Capricorn sign. First of all, let's have a look at where the planets are transiting all this month of May 2023 in your horoscope. Well, we have Saturn transiting your 2nd house. We have 4 planets transiting your 4th house, that is Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury. In your 5th house, we have the presence of Venus. In your 6th house, we have the presence of Mars. And in your 10th house, we have the presence of Ketu. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something that we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. First of all, let's talk about your luck factor. The luck is seen from the 9th house. The owner of the 9th house happens to be Mercury. The Mercury is sitting with Rahu, and Rahu is not a very conducive planet to give a rise in luck, and therefore the luck is lying a little low. If there are some important decisions to be made, it is not a very good time. Just wait a little while and then you can take those decisions. Let's talk about your health factor now. Now, health is seen from the Ascendant. The owner of the Ascendant happens to be Saturn, which is comfortably sitting in the 2nd house. So this is a very, very conducive time as far as your health is concerned. If you were facing some problems earlier, now they are going to subside slowly and you're going to grow better, healthier and healthier. Let's talk about your love life now. The love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house is supposed to be Venus, but it will move to the 6th house very soon from the 2nd and will stay there till the 30th of May. Venus will also make a combination with Ketu till the 11th of May, and therefore there might be some kind of turbulence in your love life. In case there is turbulence, then you can chant Ketu's Bij Mantra, and the Bij Mantra of Ketu is Om Sram Srim Sram Saketve Nama. Now this is not a very good time to propose somebody. However, if you have somebody to propose to at your workplace, then you can do that, but after the 11th of May. Moving ahead and talking about your marital life now. The marital life is seen from the 7th house. Now, in the 7th house, we'll have the presence of debilitated Mars very soon from the 10th of May. So therefore, it is important that you decide not to be possessive. It is important to give space to your spouse. It is important not to be angry at trifle issues. And if you can do that, then the marital life is going to run smooth. However, if there is some kind of a problem, then chant Mars Bij Mantra or do Hanuman Chalisa. That is going to help. The Bij Mantras of Mars is Om Krang Kring Krom Sa Bhamay Nama. Om Krang Kring Krong Sah Bhamay Nama. Let's move ahead and talk about your career aspects now. The career is seen from the 10th house, but in the 10th house we have the presence of Ketu. Now it has been so for the previous few months and it will be so for the next few months. So therefore you need to be on guard, because it is because of yourself, because of your inflexibility, your bad attitude, probably. I mean, if it is in real it was bad, or it might be perceived that it was bad, there might be some problems. You might be disinterested at your workplace in the present projects which you're doing. And the owner of the 10th house this month moves on to the 6th house. Now this is something better. So in case you were planning to change your job, then after the 11th of May till the 30th of May, this would be a right time to do so. And let's talk about the educational prospect now. It is seen from the 5th house, and the owner of the 5th house is going to move to the 6th house and form a combination with Saturn and Ketu. Now it means that you need to put a little more effort, because otherwise there will be distractions and there will be problems. However, if you're doing courses like Unani medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, then these are conducive times, because Venus and Ketu and Saturn form a combination in which they promote all these healing modalities. So let's move ahead and talk about your business life now. Now, business is seen from the 7th house. In the 7th house, we'll have the presence of Mars, but Mars will get debilitated here from the 10th. However, Mars happens to be the 11th Lord, and therefore, even if you do proposals which are not sounding very good, you can earn a lot of profit. This is a very conducive time as far as business is concerned. Profits are on the cards. Let's move ahead and talk about the Aquarius sign now. Let's first of all see at various planetary placements in your horoscope all the month of May 2023. Well, in your first house we have the presence of Saturn. In your third house we have the presence of Jupiter, Rahu, Saturn, Mercury. In your fourth house we have Venus. In your fifth house we have Mars. And in your ninth house we have the presence of Ketu. What does all this planetary placement mean for various of your life aspects is something that we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. Talking about your luck factor now. The luck is gauged from the 9th house. And the owner of the 9th house happens to be Venus. And Venus is going to be there in Gemini and look towards its own house, and therefore these are going to be conducive times. However, the presence of Ketu over there is certainly a blemish, but that is going to be there till the 30th of October. However, Saturn has taken over the degrees of Ketu and Mars, and therefore the situation now will start to improve. So if you were facing some problems for the past few months, if your love affair was on the back burner, if the disillusionment in heart was there because of some factors, this disillusionment is going to go and luck is going to increase in the coming months. Now let's talk about your health. Health is seen from the Ascendant. In the Ascendant you have the Ascendant Lord, and it has crossed the degrees, the obstructions from Ketu and Mars, and therefore health is going to be better now. Talking about your love life. The love life is seen from the 5th house. The owner of the 5th house happens to be Mercury, but Mercury is with Rahu, and therefore there are bound to be some kind of illusions, delusions, suspicions in love life. You have to keep them down. Just be stronger. Don't believe on hearsay, and then your love life can prosper, and you can also have small little short travels with your love partner this month. Let's move on and talk about your marital life now. Marital life is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Leo, or Sun, and Sun will move on to the 4th house from the 16th of May, and right now also it has crossed the degree of Rahu and now is there with Mercury. Therefore it promises to be a good time as far as marital relations are concerned. Let's talk about your educational prospects now, which are seen from the 5th house, and the 5th house will be occupied by Venus all this month. Although Ketu is casting an aspect, but since Venus is going to come there, this is going to be a good time as far as education is concerned. However, still, if you were finding some problems earlier, then you can do the Bij mantra of Ketu, and which is Om Sram Srim Sram Sa Ketve Nama. Moving ahead and talking about your career now. Career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house happens to be Mars, and Mars will be going to get debilitated in the 6th house from the 10th of May. But the 10th and the 6th house have an internal harmony, and they both are the houses of karma, and therefore this is going to be a good time as far as career is concerned. The only thing is that the boss might be a little over demanding. You might need to put in a little more effort. That's all. Let's move ahead and talk about your business life now. The business is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house is Sun, and Sun has crossed the difficulties of Rahu very recently, and it will be comfortably placed in the 4th house. So as far as career is concerned, this is a good month for Aquarian natives. Let's move ahead and talk about the Pisces sign now. First of all, we will have a look at the planetary placements in your horoscope all the month of May 2023. We have the presence of Jupiter, Rahu, Sun and Mercury in your 2nd house. In your 3rd house, we have Venus. In your 4th house, we have Mars. And in your 12th house, we have Saturn. Finally, we also have Ketu in your 8th house. What does all this mean for various of your life aspects is something we are going to discuss in detail right ahead. Let's talk about your luck factor now, which is seen from the 9th house. Mars, the 9th lord, is going to get debilitated, but it is going to see its own house, and therefore luck is going to be average, not low, not high, but average. Therefore, if there were some important decisions to be taken, it is far better that you wait a little while, because the next Rashi that the Mars will go to will be better. Now, let's talk about your luck factor now. The owner of the luck factor, that is the Ascendant Lord, happens to be Jupiter, but Jupiter is right now with Rahu, and therefore you need to be little on guard. The thinking has to be less. Have some water, control your Rahu by chanting the Rahu's mantras, and keep your immunity higher. The Bij mantras of Rahu is Om Bhram Bhrim Bhram Sarrave Nama. Let's move on and talk about your love life now. Love life is seen from the 5th house, and Mars is going to enter the 5th house. Mars happens to be the 9th lord also, and therefore this is going to be a conducive time as far as love life is concerned. If you were waiting for some better times to propose somebody, then this is the right time to do so. Let's talk about your marital life now. Marriage is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Mars, but Mars is going to get debilitated from the 10th of May, and this is not a very conducive time. You need to have a control on your temper, your aggressiveness and your possessiveness. If you can do that, then harmony can prevail in your marital life. If you can't do that and something bad happens, some disharmony arises, then chant the Bij mantras of Mars. The Bij mantra of Mars is Om Krang Kring Krong Sa Bhamay Nama. Om Krang Kring Krong Sa Bhamay Nama. Now let's move on next to your educational prospects. The education is seen from the 5th house. The 5th lord will be occupied by Mars from the 10th of May, which is a good sign because Mars happens to be the 9th house. It is a good sign if you are applying for, if you are doing higher education. For lower education, this is not a very good sign. You need to put a little extra effort. Moving on and talking about your career now. The career is seen from the 10th house. The owner of the 10th house happens to be Jupiter, but Jupiter is right now there with Rahu, which is a mischievous planet, and therefore in career there might be some hiccups which you might face in the month of May 2023. For those of you, exceptional few, whose Rahu is very good in their birth horoscope, only for them this will prove to be a very, very good time for their career. Otherwise, you'll have to be on your guard, see what is happening, is there anything which is being said against you, etc., and counter it as soon as it happens, but in a polite way. Let's move ahead and talk about now your business prospects. Business is seen from the 7th house. The owner of the 7th house happens to be Mercury, and Mercury is also placed with Rahu, all this one in the 2nd house. Now, if you are there in some kind of business related to the products of Rahu, for example, petroleum products, for example, business of intelligence, then this is a very conducive time. Otherwise, things are not what they seem to be. There might be some lag in the payments and rest. Everything is fine as far as the business is concerned. These are the only two things you need to be guarding against. Okay, this is all I have for you for the month of May 2023. I will meet you in the next video where we'll discuss about the monthly predictions for June 2023. Till then, may God shower His beneficence upon you. I will meet you in the next video. Till then, this is Prabal Nandwani signing off.